That's the sound of a big deal. At Wayfair, that sound happens a lot. Dream sofa for half the price? Big deal. New dining table you've been eyeing for months? Big deal. Finally picking up those last few pieces and finishing that bedroom? Now that's a really big deal. Whatever your home needs, Wayfair has the selection, the savings, and over millions of 5-star reviews to back it up. Shop Wayfair.com today before someone else snags your big deal.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word SHOW to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word SHOW, S-H-O-W, to 33777. Text SHOW to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here live from Jacksonville, Florida. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you with me. It's an open line Friday as well, and you can text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 should you wish to be on the program. Now, I got to begin with the obvious. I want to recount for you the last couple of weeks. We had an Islamic radical in Austin, Texas, kill multiple people. We've had 2 Islamic radicals in New York City throw an improvised explosive device into a crowd of anti-Islam protesters, not at the mayor of New York, for those of you at CNN. We've had, did you hear about this one? We had a group of Islamic radicals in San Francisco beat up and hospitalized men who were speaking Hebrew in public. We've had a shooter at Old Dominion University who had been in the military, radicalized, pledged loyalty to ISIS, got out of prison when Joe Biden was president, and yesterday killed an ROTC instructor before the ROTC cadets killed him. And we had an Islamic radical drive a truck full of explosives into a Jewish school in Detroit, Michigan. He himself was killed. I'm waiting for CNN to report that one as some Jews killed a Muslim. It turns out that this particular Islamic radical had 2 brothers who were in Hezbollah. And progressive outlets are saying, well, it's understandable he was upset. His brothers got killed by the Israelis. The Jews killed the brothers. Why? Because they were actual terrorists. That's why. How is this guy here? All of these people, by the way, naturalized American citizens or refugees. We have a problem with Islamic radicalism in this country, and the media is obsessed about right-wing terrorism. The media wants you to believe that somehow it is right-wing white-wingers who are the terrorists. In fact, on MSNBC yesterday, Chris Hayes, his conversation was about how the right has stirred up anti-Semitism in the country, as if the left has clean hands. It's actually institutionalized on the left now. Gavin Newsom intends to go on the podcast of Hassan Piker, a man who has cheered on Hamas's murder of Jews and stood in Tiananmen Square waving a Chinese communist flag, saying he has no loyalty to the United States. And Gavin Newsom wants to go on that guy's podcast and be chummy with him because he's the left-wing bro. On top of that, we have massive lines now forming, multi-hour waits at airports around the country because TSA agents have quit. They're not showing up for work. The Democrats have refused to fund Homeland Security. You know and I know if the Democrats were bombing Syria right now, as Barack Obama had done, or Libya, and the Republicans had shut down the Department of Homeland Security, the media would be profiling parents who couldn't make it to their grandparents' funerals with their kids because they missed their flight because of the TSA backups, and would be shoving microphones in every Republican's face asking them when they're going to open Homeland Security. The fact that Manu Raju from CNN, who is an expert at finding Republicans and shoving microphones in their faces to demand to know their take on obscure Republican dog catchers in Missouri, can't find any Democrat in Congress to ask him about keeping Homeland Security closed during war, is another example of the media being in the tank for the Democrats. The nonsense about the Strait of Hormuz, and we didn't plan for a takeover of the Strait of Hormuz. You know, you can actually go online, and we'll get to this in a little while. You can actually go online and find war planning scenarios about taking Iran out going back to the 1980s, and every single one of them says they're going to try to shut the Strait of Hormuz. The idea that General Kane did not contemplate it is nonsense. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the stories have started leaking after Democrats in Congress were briefed and came out of the meetings. Well, we can't tell you about classified information, but it's not good. And then suddenly we get these stories suggesting it's not good. The Democrats are trying to sabotage a war effort against a terrorist regime that's been killing Americans for 49 years, and the American media is with them in this endeavor. They are openly suggesting on Twitter, I saw Chuck Todd do this, perhaps the president isn't really being told the truth of the operation. What is the truth? We are engaged in bombings on a daily basis at the same rate we were in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Desert Storm, all of which took over 40 days to accomplish the mission. We have eliminated their air capacity such that we can fly B-52s over Iran with impunity. The Israelis are now targeting the Basij movement, the motorcycle gangs in Iran that terrorize the citizens. The Iranian citizens can literally now call a phone number or text a phone number and provide the Israelis the coordinates of where these checkpoints are, and they're flying drones over and killing the people, but somehow we're losing. The Ayatollah is in a coma, possibly without a leg. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is sustained, and the idea that we expected them to collapse within 24 hours, the only people who didn't know that are clearly the people who didn't listen to the show, because I've been telling you for the last multiple months that it was going to be harder to take them out. We couldn't take them out just by toppling the top, that there was a more expansive campaign we would have to do, and it looks like we're doing it. And meanwhile, in this country, what's the response to a series of Islamic radical fascists killing Jews and others in the country? It's, we had it coming, didn't we? It's because the president invaded Iran. We've had these murderers in this country since Joe Biden flooded the border, and somehow it is Donald Trump's fault, really? Somehow it's Donald Trump's fault. Why isn't it the fault of the Democrats who flooded the country with these people and didn't try to make sure that they assimilated? I say this all the time, and some of you really don't like it when I make this point, but there actually are in this country Muslim communities of people who really don't like the jihadists. They just want to live their lives peacefully like the rest of us. They love the United States, and they're Muslim. I know them. I have neighbors who are Muslims who love this country. They fly the American flag. They don't celebrate Christmas. They participate in Ramadan, and they have gone on Hajj, and they just want to be left alone, and they don't like the Islamic radicals. They don't like the jihadists. They don't believe in it. It is not their sect of Islam. And the fact that we have people on the right in this country who can't distinguish between the two is actually bad, but not nearly as bad as the fact that on the left, they not only refuse to distinguish the two, they don't believe that jihadists are here. At this point, I think it would be safer to overcorrect and exclude some reasonable, peaceful people than to undercorrect and keep bringing in people who turn out to be jihadists. How many Americans are going to have to die before the media actually starts asking Democrats about TSA? How many Americans are going to have to die before the Democrats get serious about Homeland Security? You know the answer? Too many. You know why? Because every death is going to be for the Democrats to blast Donald Trump. Every single death is going to be for the Democrats to attack Donald Trump. Every single death is going to be played up by the media in order to try to one-up the Republicans and Donald Trump. Every single death will be used as a campaign tool for the Democrats in November. This is sadly where we are as a country. This is sadly the situation we are in. And we shouldn't be in this situation. There is no reason for us to be in a situation where the national media and the Democrats are rooting against the United States. The only reason we're in the situation is because Kamala Harris lost. The media and the Democrats did everything they could to prop up Kamala Harris, to claim that she was somehow the second coming of the greatest Democrat ever, and that she was the best candidate, the only candidate, the wise candidate, the one that everyone should pick. And she had 100 days and fell flat on her face after they had spent all their time protecting Joe Biden. And now the same energy the media used to protect Joe Biden is being used to protect Islamic radicals in this country and the mullahs in Iran. They are at war with the United States. The mullahs and the media, and it seems the Democrats. The level of spinelessness of the Democrats is offensive to me. The willingness to be partisans in this. We've got soldiers abroad fighting for this country. Several died yesterday in an airplane crash in Iraq. God forbid they ate steak and lobster before they died instead of giving it to illegal aliens. It's wild to see this. It is unfortunate. And it is just, I don't know. It's disloyal. I abhor using the word traitors. We throw that around so much, and it's not really. It's not specifically giving aid and comfort to the enemies. I know some of you think it will, but there's a legal definition. I am a lawyer. I try to stick to it, but it really is offensive. We had an Islamic radical run his vehicle into a Jewish school in Michigan yesterday. And you know what the New York Times' take on this is? Is that, well, this synagogue, this temple, it was actually built in the 1940s anticipating the nation of Israel. That was their take on it. That's what they wanted you to know about the attack yesterday. That the temple in Michigan was tied to the creation of the state of Israel. That's why it was a target. They had it coming, you know. You also have this story out that the mayor of New York, his wife provided illustrations for anti-Semitic woman's book. The anti-Semitic woman had committed stated blood libels against the Jews. Where was Andrew Cuomo's opposition research team? Who did the opposition research for Andrew Cuomo? The fact that we're only finding this out now. And yet, by the way, you know what the take for the media is she's a private citizen. So is Sam Alito's wife, and yet y'all went after Sam Alito and his wife for her hanging up the pine tree flag and flying a flag upside down. Apparently, there are no Republicans and conservatives and conservative judicial picks whose wives are private citizens, but the mayor of New York, whose wife was also a campaign advisor to his, who actually had a series of profiles about her role in the campaign, she's now a private citizen. The level of hostility, the level of anti-Americanness. We've got an American soldier, an ROTC instructor, who was murdered yesterday by an Islamic radical who had been in the American military, who was let out of prison when Joe Biden was president, who came into a classroom, asked if it was ROTC, and when they said yes, pulled his gun and killed the instructor, and the students set upon him. And you know, the original statement was that the students strangled him to death. It turns out he was stabbed by an ROTC student who broke Virginia law by keeping a knife with him on campus since he couldn't bring a gun, and he's the hero of the day. And even the FBI is downplaying that fact because they don't want that ROTC student to get prosecuted by the progressive George Soros-funded prosecutor of Norfolk, Virginia. So we're to believe that they set upon him and beat him to death, which is fine with me. However they did it, God bless those students. Pray for the family of the lost. We've had multiple instances of Islamic radicalism in this country in just the past 2 weeks, and the media wants you to know diversity is our strength. You know why the left says diversity is our strength? In Australia, after Islamic radicals killed the Jews on Bondi Beach, they said diversity is our strength. In Great Britain, after Islamic radicals killed people, they said diversity is our strength. Yesterday, after there were 2 separate attacks by Islamic radicals against Jews and ROTC members in this country, progressives said diversity is our strength. You know what that actually means? It means shoot them, not us. We're the good people. The left hasn't figured out yet. The Islamic radicals will come for them eventually. They're just hoping they can persuade them otherwise. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have a story for all of you. You're going to be as grossed out as I am. I am broadcasting from WOKV in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm staying down here. I probably shouldn't say the very, very nice 5-star hotel on Amelia Island that I'm staying at. Got there at 9 o'clock last night. Decided I needed to take a shower before I went to bed, about 10 o'clock. Got in the shower. Didn't smell quite great, but okay. The water immediately started backing up. And it's one of those where you have you can't see the drain. You can pop the top. It's like, I've done this before. It's probably just a hair clog. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe someone had an accident in the shower and tried to shove it down the drain hole. And the whole thing was backed up. I'm trying not to gag here. So I called, said, could someone please come deal with my shower? It's backed up. That was 10:15. Called again at 11:15. I called again at 11:45. At midnight, a kid showed up. By then, I had tried to clean it myself. And guess what? The whole drain line was backed up. You could hear the glug, glug, glug coming from the separate bathtub and also from the sink drain. I said, buddy, that little hair clog tool you got ain't going to work. And I have spared you from having to scoop out what appears to be manure from the drain. And he said, it's going to need to be snaked. Are you okay if I snake it? I said, sure. He said, I'll be right back. That was 12:15. This morning, at 1 o'clock this morning, I called downstairs and said, I got to go to bed. I don't know where he went. He hadn't come back. So this morning I went downstairs and said, they need to clean my shower or they need to give me my money back and I got to go find someplace else to stay. This is just disgusting. Oh my gosh, what a night at a 5-star hotel. And it's a pretty. Anyway, I got to move on. I took a shower in the bathtub. It's really backed up too, by the way. Now, I got to tell you about Vision Computer. I wish I could have used them for IT support last night, but I could not. And Vision, they can be your IT support. They're way more reliable than the overnight maintenance at this hotel. You can call them day or night, and they actually get on the phone in 15 seconds or less, and they can diagnose the clogs on your computer, among other things. You can call them at 404-COMPUTE. Tell them Eric sent you. You might save some money. Now, listen, you can get their managed IT support for your entire business, or for your home computer, for the computer of your kid at college, your parents, whoever you need it for, and they get the magic phone number, and you get to call them, and in 15 seconds or less, someone answers the phone and takes care of them and takes care of their computer problems. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Check them out today. They'll build you new computers, and their managed IT service comes with the new computers, or you can pay for the managed IT service separately. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Let Vision take care of your computer needs. Greetings, conversationalist. I will get to your phone calls. It is an open line Friday, 877-973-7425. But first, we got to talk about the big story other than the Islamic radicals out there, the Straight of Hormuz. Maybe the Democrats would be more engaged in this whole war if it was the gay or the trans of Hormuz, but we are left with the Straight of Hormuz. I grew up very much near there. It controls the ingress and egress of the Persian Gulf to the rest of the world. About 16 to 20% of the world's oil flows through there. The Iranians have struck 16 ships, and there's a report out from CNN that apparently we were not prepared for the Iranians to try to close the Strait of Hormuz. And by the way, it is the strait, not the straits. We were apparently unprepared for them to do that. That is the reporting from CNN. Now, I want to say that my first reaction was this report came after a closed-door meeting of the U.S. Senate. And Chris Murphy, you will remember, the senator from Connecticut, came out of there and blasted the administration and said we were completely unprepared for this, but he can't talk about classified information. And then suddenly we start getting these links and leaks that we're unprepared. We were caught off guard. Now, let me just ask you, in your rational mind, does that make any sense to you? You can actually read military war planning strategies from the Pentagon that have been declassified going back to the Reagan era. Every single one of them says that the Iranians would rapidly move to close off the Strait of Hormuz in order to shut down global oil supply and cause economic havoc. That the Iranians would take a military campaign and try to turn it into an economic campaign to bring pressure to end. You can go back to the 1980s and find the documentation on this, the Pentagon war planning, the Pentagon war gaming, all of these scenarios, and dive into one of the very first things Iran would do is shut the Strait of Hormuz to try to cause economic calamity around the world. So it is baffling to me to think that they would be unprepared. And then I saw Mark Halperin, and I do Mark Halperin's two-way, and I noticed this morning he said that his sources inside the White House likewise are actually telling him that, yeah, they were caught unprepared. And if it was just CNN, I would be raising my eyebrow a little bit. But when it's Mark Halperin who is saying and suggesting that actually there was some level of unpreparedness, I'm intrigued. And I got a theory on this. Now, let me read you the quote. In the last 24 hours, even people within the administration have said to me, I don't really get how we weren't prepared to deal with the Strait of Hormuz, says Mark Halperin. And I don't care if you're the most MAGA person in the world. The facts are before us. They didn't have a plan. There's no sugarcoating it. So it's right for the media to ask not just what are we going to do now, but why? How could you not have had a plan for this? That's Mark Halperin talking. Mark Halperin has very good sources within the administration. I have a theory, and to get to the theory, I need to tell you an old story. And by the way, I've reached out to Mark. He hasn't emailed me back. If he does, I'll let you know. In 2005, George W. Bush nominated Harriet Miers to replace Sandra Day O'Connor on the United States Supreme Court. Conservatives were really appalled. I know how appalled they were because I was the person who broke the news that Harriet Miers had given a donation to Al Gore when he ran against George W. Bush's father. And I know that he did that because it was actually someone from the White House who called me and told me I needed to get that out there at redstate.com. It was someone who was working on judicial picks in the White House who called me and told me that Harriet Miers had given to Al Gore and she was not a good pick. It was people in the White House trying to undermine the president's pick of Harriet Miers. Then several friends of mine in the United States Senate who were staffers were appalled. One of them is Congressman Chip Roy, who at the time was a staffer on the Judiciary Committee. He's now running for Attorney General in Texas. You should support him. Chip and other staff on the Judiciary Committee began telling reporters how badly Harriet Miers had bombed her interviews and that her writings to the Senate about her judicial philosophy were just poorly written. There were all sorts of problems. She was a bad pick. Inside the White House, staff in the White House began to echo their troubling concerns about maybe Harriet Miers was in over her head. A couple of weeks later, word leaked that Harriet Miers had completely flubbed an interview with Senator John Cornyn. That she was in over her head. She had no good answers on judicial philosophy. Here's the catch. Harriet Miers had never had the interview with John Cornyn. Harriet Miers had never actually submitted yet in writing her documentation. She was being sabotaged by the staff who believed she was a bad pick. Staff inside the White House were leaking opposition about her to people like me. Staff in the Senate were leaking to reporters about how badly she was doing in her confirmation hearing behind the scenes, behind closed doors, in writing, how bad it was. Harriet Miers wound up pulling her nomination and leaving the Bush White House. Harriet Miers had never submitted all of her paperwork and had never had any major interviews with members of the Senate. The staff had lied to the press and made it all up. They knew she was going to be a bad pick, and they wanted to sabotage her. They had tried to dissuade George W. Bush from picking her to no avail, and so they cut his legs out from under him and her. The other day, the Wall Street Journal ran a story that there were staff inside the White House who were already encouraging the president to declare victory and get out of Iran. There were already staff in the White House who thought they didn't want to go in the first place. They wanted to declare victory and they wanted to move on. They thought it was a bad effort. You have the J.D. Vance's wing did not support it. The president himself said J.D. Vance was not enthusiastic about the idea of going into Iran. You've got J.D. Vance staff picks inside the State Department. You've got J.D. Vance staff picks inside the Defense Department. You've got J.D. Vance picks inside the White House. I'm not saying it's J.D. Vance, but his staff are the biggest isolationists inside the administration. Not him, his staff. They are well sourced in the media. Could it be that it's not just Democratic staff on Capitol Hill who are leaking to CNN and elsewhere that we were unprepared for the Strait of Hormuz, that it was actually staffers inside the White House who didn't want to go into Iran in the first place, who are trying to use the media that they know the president pays attention to convince the president to pull out of Iran? CNN and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, those are three news outlets the president pays attention to. Now, there are a lot of members of the president's base who can't fathom that the president would pay attention to CNN or the New York Times, but President Trump is 80 years old. He believes in traditional media. It's why the mainstream media outlets get all the major interviews and why the mainstream media outlets get all the major leaks from this administration, because the president believes that if it's in the New York Times, it's going to get attention. If it's on CNN, it's going to get attention. The president regularly watches Fox News, but he loves Scott Jennings on CNN, and the president does pay attention to Wolf Blitzer. He pays attention to Jake Tapper. The president pays attention to John King on CNN. He pays attention to him. Why? Because in his formative media years, those were the faces and voices he paid attention to, and he pays attention to them now. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that the outlets that the people inside the White House, the president likes to pay attention to in the mainstream media, are getting the story that we were unprepared for the Strait of Hormuz, which is baffling because you go back to the 1980s and everyone has always known that that's what Iran would try to do. The president himself, when he was in his private sector life before even running for president during the Obama era, commented on Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz. It's just it's genuinely baffling to me to say we were caught off guard or surprised when for 49 years we knew this is one of Iran's core strategies. And also, we couldn't take them out immediately because we needed to clear the skies for the B-52s and the B-1s. So we've engaged in a bombing campaign. We are 13 days into this, and people are freaked out that it's a disaster. By what measure is it a disaster? The regime hasn't gone under yet. No one expected it to unless you're hyper on Twitter. And then maybe you expected the regime would collapse after 2 weeks. No normal person who's known anything about Iran has believed that the Iranian regime would collapse after 2 weeks after you killed the Ayatollah and the top leadership. I myself have been telling you for months that this would be unlike Venezuela because the way the Iranian regime was spread out and designed to reproduce itself, if the top of it was dead, it was like not a snake but a hydra. I used that comparison to you. You chop off the head, another one grows back. The comparison to a snake versus a hydra is not new to me. It's been a description of the Iranian regime within military and diplomatic circles for quite a while. Everyone has known this. Are you telling me that the people who have planned this war effort, General Kane among others, didn't know these things, that Marco Rubio didn't know these things? I'm not even bringing the president into this because it's not about the president at this point. It's about the people at the rung below the president who plan and execute the president's policies, who absolutely would have known, particularly within military circles for the last 49 years, we have anticipated that a military engagement with Iran would result in Iran trying to close the Strait of Hormuz. And if you don't believe me, go back to the 1980s when they mined the Straits of Hormuz in order to stop oil traffic, and the United States had to send minesweepers. And what's the other story we've heard? The other story we've heard is that, we don't have any minesweepers. We've decommissioned all the minesweepers. Do you know why we've decommissioned all the minesweepers? We have new technology. We use underwater drones now. Did the people who leaked to the press that we've decommissioned all the minesweepers not know that we now actually have underwater drones? We've got an entire scuba team parked in Bahrain. I know one of the guys who's leading the effort. He actually heads over there next week. Listen, was Iran able to engage more rapidly? Maybe. Did Iran have resources we underestimated? Maybe. But the idea that we were caught off guard is nonsense. You don't even have to be a super well-read person, just a moderately well-read person, to understand Iran has, on multiple occasions since the 1980s, tried to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's what they do. So my suspicion is you've got Senate Democrats leaking after their briefings to try to paint this war as a disaster. And you've got White House staff who never wanted to be there to begin with leaking. You've got Josh Hawley, the U.S. Senator from Missouri, saying we need to declare victory and come home. Josh Hawley, the Republican, is saying we need to wash our hands of it and come home. We shouldn't have been there. Josh Hawley never wanted to go. Josh Hawley's an isolationist. I think the president is being undermined by his own team, by the isolationists. They're tired of Marco Rubio winning. Rubio won on the engagement with Venezuela, which people in the White House didn't want to do. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard wasn't even admitted to the meetings. You got Marco Rubio winning on Cuba. The Cuban regime is collapsing. They've entered negotiations with the United States. And you got Marco Rubio winning on Iran. I suspect there are people in this administration who think Marco Rubio is flying a little bit too close to the sun, and they want to melt his wings. There's no way this administration was caught off guard by Iran wanting to close the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe they moved faster than we were capable of stopping. We had to clear the airspace and clear out their missiles so they couldn't shoot down the B-52s and stuff. But also, we've collapsed their Navy. We sunk a bunch of their ships just yesterday that wanted to mine the Strait of Hormuz. Are they engaging in small boats going after tankers? Yes, 16 have been hit. It's going to take some time. Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, the air war campaigns took 40 and 50 days, respectively, I think. We are 13 days in, and people are already freaking out. I think the freak out is by design, by Democrats who loathe the president and wish us to lose so he has a black eye going into the midterms, and by Republican isolationists who never wanted to be there in the first place, who are desperate for us to get out of Iran because they do not like the United States being the leader of the world. The fact of the matter is is, however, we have kicked this nest of hornets, and we have to get rid of the hornets or they're going to keep stinging us now. So the president got us in there. We dropped the bombs. We killed the Ayatollah. The second Ayatollah is already incapacitated. We need to see this through. And the idea that it would take 3 weeks, a country the size of Alaska, has always been nonsense. The idea that we're caught off guard by what Iran is doing is absolute nonsense. This is an internal struggle within the Trump administration by the isolationists and Democrats in Congress to try to sabotage a military campaign against a terrorist nation that's been killing us for 49 years. Why? Part of them, I suspect, is because they don't want the Iranian regime to collapse and have us access the records that shows how many people in the United States the Iranians have been throwing money at for years to run a propaganda campaign for them. Some of these people who are trying to undermine the effort profit by us never knowing how much they've profited to begin with. Welcome back. It is Open Line Friday. I'll take your phone calls in the next hour, 877-973-7425. Down here in Jacksonville, Florida, going to be at the Players Championship tomorrow at TPC Sawgrass, hanging out around the area. I stay on Amelia Island, which is a beautiful island in North Florida, and driving down the coast, it is a phenomenally gorgeous drive, particularly this morning. Sun was up, a little bit of a haze on the water. Absolutely gorgeous, driving along the Atlantic Ocean, and there was a guy in front of me, and I thought, this person must be like 200 years old. They're driving, and they slow up, they speed up, and they slow down, and they speed up, and I finally realized it was a young person so mesmerized by the views. Every time we go around, he'd slow way down and start looking out the windows like you're going to get a cyclist run over if you don't pay attention to the road. It was just wonderful. Speaking of golf, this hour of the program is brought to you by Van Allen Golf. VanAllenGolf.com is the website, or text golf to 33777. When we come back, we got to talk about the news out of Cuba. Looks like they're negotiating something about a transition. But first, let me tell you, all of these events with the Strait of Hormuz, with gold and silver, with the BRIC nations, with the Chinese economic situation, they're affecting markets, they're affecting commodities, they're affecting precious metals. And Swiss America is a great place for you to get educated. If you go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric today, not only can you get educated with their News and Insights tab, they got a great blog, they've got a podcast, Swiss America Trading on YouTube. They can also give you their report, The Secret War on Cash. It's about how the government is trying to control and monitor your spending. It includes crypto, how the government's trying to steer you. You know, there's legislation here where I am in Georgia to make gold legal tender like it is in 5 other states. So they can't monitor your spending of coinage and legal tender, but they want to. Get the report, The Secret War on Cash. Go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric and get all the news and insights about what's happening with precious metals and commodities, and consider a relationship with them on a precious metal IRA. SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK.